Well, as we approach a new year, I ask myself, what will 1972 hold for us? Oh, sorry, 2016, isn't it? I get a bit confused when I go to church because I think the first real interaction I had in church was in 1972. That's not as long back as some of you, but it's a fair way back, isn't it? It's a few years, and guess what? Not much has changed. Maybe in the individual congregations the seats might be framed in a slightly different way. We might have a little bit better technology, but not much has changed, has it? Yeah? No? Am I right? Some things maybe, although not that much has changed. It's interesting when you look through old things in the books and think, where were we all those years ago? And this is something that I've been thinking about as I've been reflecting on last year, 2015 and 2016, and where that may lead us as a congregation, as a church. As I've said before, and this will come as no surprise to you, the Uniting Church is facing some very difficult issues. We've once again been through a tough time as we've seen the impact of the inquiry into the children within our church and what's happened to some of the unfortunate kids that have gone through some kind of interaction, I can say it in the nicest possible way, with the church that hasn't been very positive. The reality is, our numbers are going down. Yeah? Is that true? Yes. Here, even in this wonderful, great gathering of a church at Springvale, our numbers have shrunk significantly. Ministry placements are less than they used to be, and a lot less in time, Those places which had full-time placements are now going down to part-time placements, which I have to say on a personal level is a bit of a concern, but if I can sort of brace myself for the next 5 years, I'll probably be okay. That's called retirement. And I didn't think, when in 1972 I first went into the church, I wasn't thinking much about retirement, but as the years are going by, the more and more I think about it. Although when I see my friend John here, it does remind me that you never really retire. It's an ongoing job. It's a bit like being, I was thinking about the Queen. I don't think of her often, but I was thinking about the fact that she's always the Queen. She doesn't stop being the Queen when she's off, sort of 5 o'clock comes, she gets the smokes out and the drink, and I'm going to stop being the Queen for another few hours, another 8, 12 hours, and I'll be Queen again. She's always the Queen. And as ministers, you're always the minister. People will come and ask you for help, they'll seek enlightenment and guidance. Well, that's a pretty daunting it's a privilege, but it's a daunting task in many ways. And so I was thinking of all of these things, and I got a bit sort of head up in my head, and I thought, what am I going to do? And about this time of year, I always retreat into the cricket. Any lovers of cricket here? Yeah, a few of you? Anyone detest it terribly? Thank you, Greg. Ross. Well, you're Scots, what can I say?
I didn't even know it was still going.
Apparently. I love cricket though. And this time of year you can get so lost in the cricket. There's cricket everywhere. Every night I've been putting on the television to watch the cricket, although I'm a bit shocked. They wear funny clothing, don't they? And they have a white ball. It doesn't go far. I sit myself down there thinking, beauty, 5 days, I'm going to watch the cricket. And within a couple of hours, it's all done and over and everyone's gone home. And I'm told that things have changed. I'm a purist at heart. I love the whites. I love the 5-day test. I love the red ball. And even in the test cricket, they've gone away from the red ball to the pink one. Sacrilege! Thank God there's sanity today, that when I get home and turn the television on, hopefully, somewhere in Sydney, if it's not raining, they will be playing with a red ball wearing traditional whites. But if we think the game has not changed, we're crazy. One thing that I am very aware of, the game of cricket has changed immensely. Now, if you're from overseas, I really understand that cricket is a bit of a strange concept to you. In fact, even if you're from here, it can be a bit of a strange concept. And even if you love the game, you might find it's a pretty strange concept because it's got rules that I don't think anyone can understand. You know, if you can explain to me the LBW, leg before wicket rule, then you're a better person than I am. And they've got all these wonderful new graphics that make cricket far more watchable. And I must say, I lament the sounds of cricket. John Arlott, for those of you who used to listen on the radio, an English commentator, who used to be able to paint pictures with his words, make a game come to life as we would listen to it, being beamed in from England, the Ashes, the Great Test. But things have changed. And as I sat there last night, turned the television on, I was allowed 10-15 minutes of watching it, because Eleanor said, no, you can't stay watching it all day, Papa. As I turned the television on, I saw 70,000 people that went to a game of what was originally called the Pajama Game. 70,000 people watching this hit and giggle game and seemingly enjoying it. And then I asked myself about the church. What has changed since 1972? You know, even this great staid game of cricket with all of its rules, all of its regalia, has changed immensely. But has the church changed? And I have to say, not too much. You see, even when I became a minister, that was a fair process. It was a long term since I thought, yes, I'd like to do this, and actually coming out of the ecclesial sausage machine, being a fully licensed and patented minister ready to go out into the world. And we were told that the job that we had was to make ourselves redundant. In other words, to empower the congregation so much and get you so excited that I didn't have to do my job anymore. And the job was to pass the baton on, another sporting metaphor. Passing the baton comes from relay running. When you run along and you see that, I don't do too much running now, I must be honest. I don't have a runner's physique. But I used to like running, and you run along and then the person who was the relay runner ahead of you would be there and you'd have a baton in your hand and you'd try and do it perfectly to hand the baton from one person to another. And it was said that the job of the church is to hand the baton on to the next generation. Well, I have to say to you today, where is the next generation to hand the baton on to? I'm going to do something. How many of you are under 40 here today? Thank you. Someone's telling fibs. and I'm not going to say who it was. And may I say you could get away with it. But by and large, you know, we're all pretty well up there, aren't we? And we've got our two foreigners over there and another foreigner over here who can get away with being under 40. But who are we going to pass the baton on to? And in the uniting church, that is a very big problem. May I say it's also a problem with some of the more swift congregations and denominations, because latest figures are showing that the Pentecostal churches are struggling with the same issue that we have. And whereas you might go to a Waverley Christian church, which has got all the bells and smells and everything going, by and large, people going to church and following the Christian faith is decreasing. And I'm going to say why. And in believing that, I have to say, what do we have to do about it? Well, there are a few things. I like those diagrams where you follow the route of your conclusion, where you say yes, no, and you end up somewhere. We can do nothing. What will doing nothing mean in the long term? Will it? Well, probably. Well, unfortunately, we are all finite beings. And whereas this was a church, probably, going back not too long ago, where many of you were in your 30s and 40s. By and large, we've all got old, as I attested to as I looked at myself shaving in the mirror this morning. Where is that young man that used to look back at me every day? I don't know. But we're getting older. What if we do the same as we're doing every week? What's that going to do? Well, we know God does miraculous things and brings in lots of Sudanese people at some stage, because he's done that before, or she has. But is that going to happen all of the time? Is that attested to by every church that continues to do the same old thing? If we just keep on going, we are really trusting in God to do something pretty extra special. And we've got to ask ourselves, what makes us different from every other church that's closed along Burke Road? As you go along Burke Road and see the monument to the churches of the 30s and 40s there. By and large, many of which have closed their doors, and some have become residences, some have become theatre, arts places and spaces. One has become a solicitor's office. What exempts Springvale Uniting Church from that fate? Or the other alternative is we do something. And to do something is fine, but the reality is we've got to work out what we want to do. And I can say, in all honesty, I put a question to the church council at our last church council, that we actually do something. I was then interrogated in what we should do, Faye, and I said, I don't know. If I knew, I'd be doing it, because I know that whatever you set out to build takes time. When I set out to build my house, out there in Whoop Whoop, where I occasionally stay, I took a fair while to work out the plans, to see what the plans were, and then they had to build the house. And I was told it would take 12 weeks, and so 32 weeks later, we were somewhat near ready to move in. When we built this men's shed out the back, did we build it? Did it take us 5 minutes to build? No, it took us 4 years. 4 years from the concept. What's going to happen when I look forward in my mirror, not just to 12 months down the track, but to 5 years down the track? And I have to say to my wonderful ladies over here who do such a good job in organising the op shop, what's going to happen when you can't do it anymore? You do a great job, and from the bottom of my heart I can say that, but in 5 years you're going to be, and 5 years older, and perhaps you don't want to do it. Perhaps if you've got grandchildren, you might be wanting to spend more time with your grandkids, or doing other stuff, or maybe you've moved away, or maybe, I didn't want to say that, Bill, but thank you, you're closer to it than I am, I think. A better place. I hope so, I really do. I hope it's going to be so much better. But what I'm saying here is that if we do nothing, or if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to go nowhere. I want us not to do something, but to think about what we need to do. Because the imperative way is that we have to do something. Or else we just keep the club going. We're all very happy because we like each other by and large. We're pretty good friends. We do a lot of good stuff together. But otherwise, we build nothing. I have to say to you, I'm not doing this out of vested interest either, because I know that I'm in the latter part of my ministry here. And that in the not too distant future, there will be discussions about someone else being here. So I'm not doing it to say, hey, do this because it will be better for me. But do it for yourselves. Do it to attract new people. Because one thing I think about, not this church, but the church in general, is that basically we don't do things that attract people back to us. For really since the 50s, we've seen a hemorrhaging out of people out of the church, leaving us, moving away. Who's got kids here? No one? You've got some kids, I can see them. One of them at least. You've got one, yeah? Your children? Yeah, you've got one there. That's right. Where are all the other ones? You know, are they here? Is it because it's a bad place and we don't do good things? Their lives are crazy, aren't they? I mean, I look at Trudy here, my friend Trudy. I wish she could do something with herself, but she just doesn't know what to do with herself, this woman. I won't ask you how many clubs and things you belong to, but one of the groups that you belong to is called Rotary, correct? Tell me about your story about Rotary. Just a little bit, just the potted version, 2-second version.
About the old Rotary.
Yeah.
Well, the old Rotary were lovely people, but they just sat and ate meals and we couldn't get anyone to join it, so we had to start a new club to start that appealed to a younger generation.
Has that worked?
It has, yes.
So what magic did you use? Was there...
We had to change. We had to change what we were doing.
Okay.
So we could attract
This is Rotary.
Because the old Rotary, they're lovely people, but they were dying out. And so we had to start a new Rotary club too.
Let me get Rotary. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. But Rotary shouldn't change. I mean, Rotary's Rotary. And don't you toast the Queen and do all of that sort of
The
stuff?
next generation didn't feel that was relevant to what they wanted to do. They wanted to help, but they wanted to help in a different way.
God, thank goodness that's not the church, because how dare we do something in a different way? So the story you're basically telling me is something that's like Rotary, which has got a lot of good things happening, done some great stuff, had good people in it, but they changed. They had to change to attract new people, to be relevant. Do you think the church needs to change? This is a genuine question. I personally believe that it has to change, and has to change radically, because when I looked at the cricket last night, and I know church is not cricket, but I realised something has stayed and has locked in as this magical game for someone like me called cricket had to adapt and become something different. So the church needs to adapt, not change its message, not lose what is important to it, but needs to change the way we do it. Because basically, as I watched the cricketers, there were still bowlers. They were still the same amount of people on the ground. There was still the same things being done. The bats, they might be a bit bigger, but they're recognisable as cricket bats. But the game was fast, it was quick, it was furious. Can't really say that of church, can you? And I'm not saying that's the good thing, because I think there are many, many good things we do well and that are important. But unless there's some give, some change. Because the story today that we have read, the story of wise men coming to see Jesus, and I've read a lot about this because I was going to preach just purely on this, but this sense of the urgency of the sense of the question that's before us came about, is really about change. Because these are not people from the Jewish faith coming to bring nice gifts. They are people from far off that bring the most outlandish gifts, seeking a king which isn't really a king. This story is full of contradiction and irony. You know, that Herod is the one that actually shows them where he is, but then he doesn't know where they are, so they have to come back by a secret passage. There's a lot of things in this story that really do test our credibility. And people say, do you think it's true? And I say, I don't know if it's true, but I'm sure it holds the truth. I'm sure there's truth in it, whatever happened, because I wasn't there at the time. But there's something about this story that talks about the sense that the locked in is not necessarily the thing that's going to change us. This is the heralding of the gospel being for all people, from people with the craziest of beliefs, magicians from the east who come. That's what we do know about them. The magi, that's where the word magi comes from, and the word magic exist together. But God and God's love extends beyond this. But I sometimes wonder if the church, not our church, but the church, is prepared to see that God's love extends beyond the faithful few, because we've made it so comfortable for ourselves, so recognisable for ourselves, that we are scared perhaps. We are frightened in what we might lose to say things will change. I think I frightened just after Christmas some ladies when I sat down here, and they were very gracious and very kind because they listened. But I said, what would happen if we gutted the pews out of the church? You know, there's a lot of churches that don't have pews, they're called Orthodox. Pews don't make us religious. Tables don't make us religious. Even Bibles don't make us religious. What makes us people of faith is who we are and how we follow. And my goodness, the Uniting Church has got an incredible journey that it needs to face from 2016 onwards. Let it begin with us. Let it begin in our heart.